I'm Susan Cleveland. I'd like to share with you today how I make prairie points. Those are little folded triangles. They can be slipped into any sewing project or any craft project. I put them in my quilts. So let's get to it. There are basically two different kinds of prairie points. This kind has the folds on this diagonal. This kind has folds meeting down the middle. They both basically start with squares. So for this kind, you start with the square, fold it diagonally like this, wrong sides together, and press. Then bring that pointy corner down to this pointy corner and press. That's all there is to it for that kind. And then you've got these folds meeting over here. A lot of people, when they use these, they'll tuck one inside the other and make like a mountain range. So that's one kind. This is the other, where it starts by folding into a rectangle like that. And then these two top corners come down to meet in the center. And this can get just a little tricky in order to get a pointy point up there without getting a pucker. So there, I'm pressing that real well, and there's that kind of prairie point. Now the kind that I like to use in my work is this kind, but embellished. So this is what I'd like to share with you how to do now. What I do is I start with a strip of fabric. It can be any strip, bigger for bigger prairie points, smaller for smaller, obviously. And then it needs to be pressed wrong sides together like this. And then comes the optional step. You can add some decorative stitching along the edge beside the fold if you like. So this is a strip, pressed wrong sides together. I added the decorative stitching by machine near the fold. Now when I'm going to add a decorative stitching, I want to make sure it shows. So I choose from a variety of heavier threads. These are 12-weight cotton threads that are called spaghetti, and they stitch beautifully, and the stitches really show. So that's what I like. Now we're going to cut this up into segments. Okay, there's my folded strip with the optional stitching. If you don't want to do the stitching, then you don't do the stitching. I started with a 3-inch strip, so I'm going to cut my segments into 3 inches also, just like this, and work my way down the strip. Just like that. Now when I get a whole bunch of them cut, then I'm going to go back to the pressing surface and press them into prairie points. Now I mentioned earlier that it can be challenging to get the perfect little point at the top of that prairie point. So I use this tool that I've invented. It's called the Prairie Pointer. That's what it looks like in the store. So after I've cut those segments, here they are. I take and I put them right sides down on my pressing surface, and I just sort of scatter them all over. And then I take my Prairie Pointer tool. Now, as I mentioned, I started with a 3-inch strip. There's a 3-inch line here on this tool. And I'm going to put that at the base of each segment like that. And then I bring those top corners down to the center, and you see it's much easier to get that point up at the top. I'm going to set my iron for a little bit of steam. Now you see I slide my iron on there, and then I slide the tool right out. So the tool could stay in there because it's stainless steel. That would be okay. It can get hot. And while the iron's working on that one, I come over and I work on this next prairie point like this. Bring those corners down to the middle, set the iron on it, slide the tool out. Now do you see this first one I worked on? It comes out just perfect. All those raw edges are aligned at the bottom, and the top point is perfect. I'm going to go ahead and do one more to show you. Bring that down, hold my finger there, slide my iron on, and slide the tool off. And you see how nice they come out? Now I'll show you some of my quilting projects where I have added these prairie points. I've used them in several different ways. On this little tiny piece, I've used very small prairie points. They just finish a 1/2 inch tall. And I tucked them under the piping in the binding of the quilt. It just adds a little more personality to this little piece. This is another small piece where I added tiny prairie points, very evenly spaced. And you'll see I'm showing you work that's kind of small, but you could also make the prairie points bigger and put them on bigger quilts. Traditionally, they're put around the outside edge of a quilt, all pointing outward. I just seem to like them pointing inward. Now, another way to embellish these prairie points is to add a little bead at the end. These are felted wool balls. I don't have any stitching on these prairie points. I just thought the little felted ball did the trick. And of course, stripes make wonderful prairie points. They can go vertical or horizontal, and you can overlap the prairie points, make different sizes. This one has buttons at the bottom. I just love what they do for this piece. They add a whole lot of interest. This is one of my favorites. I have decorated prairie points and beads at the end. And this shows how they look when they're just inserted into a seam rather than along the outside edge. Again, zigzagged prairie points with beads at the end. This time they're inserted underneath a curved piping design on the interior of the quilt. On this one, I zigzagged the prairie points, then inserted them into horizontal seams across the surface of this pillow. They're overlapped, and I love the gradation of color. I used cherry wood fabrics in this pillow. And that's everything I do with prairie points. You can visit my website, piecesbewithyou.com, if you want to learn more, or if you like to get the tool. Bye.